afternoon. We were happily retired and in our 70s when my husband had a stroke, which led to vascular dementia. I cared for him for 5.5 years, and I'm here to share with you a little of what I learned along the way. The diagnosis was blunt. I was told bleeding had caused brain damage. His brain was in effect crumbling. There was no medication and no cure. I was shocked and scared to find myself in a new, very responsible job, which I had no knowledge of nor training for, with no family nearby. For a while, I went into denial. However, a stroke I could comprehend, so I began caring for that, hoping that things would improve. Soon, I had to accept his memory and capabilities were changing, and it was necessary for me to change my attitude. I remembered that when holiday visits to our grandchildren in California were nearing their end, we dealt with the sadness that we all felt by playing a game. We would pretend we'd just arrived to spend 2 whole days with them and ask them how we could have fun. Each child would in turn suggest a favourite pastime or outing, and these ranged from storytelling to sliding down sand dunes on sheets of cardboard. After that, the last days became some of the best and happiest days, and we gathered good memories. So I turned and faced the dementia, firstly by reading about it. I discovered that there are something like 100 types of dementia. I'd wrongly believed that Alzheimer's disease was something different, and the Alzheimer's Society was only for that. It was a good day that I discovered their wonderful service. This, in turn, led me to the Carer Centre, Crossroads, Daycare, Care UK, and Mind. The family I was missing was out there, a phone call away. I gained the title Carer, assessments, advice, and understanding. With their help, we adapted as the journey continued. As you know, dementia is unpredictable. One day he could tie his shoelaces, the next he couldn't. We swapped newspaper crosswords for magazine ones, small jigsaw puzzles for larger and larger ones. He mislaid things. I fixed his keys on a chain at his belt, and I had his details engraved on a dog tag from a pet shop and hung around his neck. We acquired a cinema pass. Carer goes free. I could watch films while he snoozed. He did sometimes object, though. If the film was too loud, it woke him up. When we dined out, I took our own large napkins. As time went on, I spoke to him differently, simply and directly, and never ever disagreeing. At times, Les would announce he was leaving, going home, and I'd distract him by suggesting we have tea first, then we needed to pack his bag. Whilst he could still write, we made Christmas cards with loving messages which he would sign. And we gave the sunsets marks out of 10. I had to take over our finances, and with his agreement, we appointed powers of attorney. I heard about this Age UK's Life Book, which is a record of personal details, documents, and contacts, all the important information in one place. It's free on request. I completed one for each of us and found it to be neat and comforting. Like many people, I'd always pushed away thoughts of mortality, but having started the tidying process, it led to our updating our wills and in due course, even to paying for our funerals in advance. I'm so glad I dealt with this taboo. Once done, it's all filed away, one thing less to worry about, perhaps at a time when you're least able to. One afternoon, when he was sleeping, I sat beside him and wrote down what he meant to me, how much I loved him. When he was awake, I read it to him. He was so pleased, he kissed the paper and put it in the pocket of his cardigan, then quickly forgot it, but I later retrieved it and placed it in the file. Maybe someday it will be a tribute to be read out at his funeral. A trying time was when he fell and broke a femur, and what a contrast. Whilst the dementia diagnosis has resulted in a frail old man handed into the care of an elderly woman who had no idea how to cope, this broken bone produced a whole team of experts, social workers, physiotherapists, people to fit disabled aids, and a rota of care workers, even including one specially to administer his medication. Overnight, I was superfluous. How baffling the NHS can be. Among the aids he was offered was a wheelchair. It wasn't a success. He was too scared to ride in it because he couldn't see anyone in control. He was afraid he might roll into the sea. Perhaps if wheelchairs too were adaptable, the seat could be used either way, they might have wider application. I'm talking now to the experts. With regard to urinary tract infections, the advice is always avoid dehydration. You know, you very rarely see elderly people carrying bottles of water in their hands. So perhaps the advice on hydration could be broader, to include fruit juices, stews, soups, stewed fruit and custard, and one of my husband's favourites, a whole jelly to himself. And when we have to consult you, please treat the dementia sufferer with kindness. Use simple words, look into their eyes, speak slowly, smile, hold their hand or touch their upper arm gently. The same with carers. A carer is your best ally, your interpreter, the only one who is always completely up to date regarding the patient. Don't forget, we're on the same team working to the same end. To the carers, everyone says to you, look after yourself. Not always easy when you're putting somebody else first. Try to adapt this to treat yourself well with love and respect. Read all you can. Knowledge is power. Don't be isolated. Call somebody and never refuse any help. You're doing a wonderful, vital job for which you should be very proud. My husband is safe now in the loving community of a small, homely dementia care home. He's relaxed and comfortable, and as my wise young granddaughter pointed out, he no longer feels embarrassed or inadequate because he's somebody there. As for me, my journey goes on. I'm glad of this opportunity to speak on behalf of carers. I congratulate you on this initiative. Thank you, Eleanor, for inviting me.